They said the mansion was cursed, that anyone who entered never lasted a week. But desperate for work, she walked through its iron gates and never imagined she was about to live the best days of her life with the man they called wicked. Sometimes, the doors we walk through by accident end up opening into the exact life we were meant to live. This is the story of a girl no one believed in and a man who didn't believe in love until fate trapped them in the same broken mansion and changed everything. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and tell me this: do you believe the place that breaks you can also heal you? Because tomorrow, I've got another story that'll touch your heart in ways you never saw coming. Now, let's get in. No one wants that job, Mia. The last girl ran out screaming in the middle of the night. Mia didn't respond. She just kept her eyes on the bulletin board, fingers trembling slightly as she ripped off the number beneath the listing. Live-in housekeeper, room and board included, high pay, secluded estate, non-disclosure required. It sounded like trouble, but trouble paid well. And Mia had $42 to her name, an eviction notice taped to her apartment door, and a mother in the hospital who still thought her daughter was doing fine. So she called. 3 days later, she stood at the base of Blackthorn Hill, suitcase in hand, staring up at the twisted iron gates of Gravemont Estate. The house loomed in the distance like something out of a novel, tall, gray-stoned, with spires that clawed at the sky. Ivy strangled its walls. No birds sang here. The driver who dropped her off didn't even wait for a tip. As the gates creaked open, the wind bit through her coat like teeth. She could almost hear the whispers of those who'd warned her. He's cruel. He lives alone for a reason. Don't look him in the eyes. But she walked in anyway. Across the mansion, hidden in a top-floor room lined with books and shadows, Ethan Vale watched her arrival through a rain-specked window. He noticed 3 things immediately. She carried her own suitcase. She wore boots with holes in them. And she didn't look up, not at the house, not at the window, not even at the crows that circled overhead. She wasn't like the others. He turned away before she reached the door. Mia was led inside by a house manager who spoke in clipped sentences and never smiled. The staff was minimal: 1 chef, 1 groundskeeper, and now 1 housekeeper. They didn't talk. They didn't look at her. They moved like ghosts through the mansion's massive halls. Her room was small, but warm. A fire crackled in the hearth. Clean linens were folded at the foot of the bed. Someone had placed a cup of tea on the nightstand. It smelled like cinnamon and something softer underneath. She wanted to cry, but didn't. The next morning, she started work, dusting endless staircases, polishing vases older than her entire family tree. She got lost twice, nearly opened a door that made the chef yell, and startled herself in a mirror she didn't know was there. But she didn't quit. She lasted the first day, then the second. On the third day, she met him. It happened in the old greenhouse behind the mansion. Mia had been sent to clean it out. Apparently no one had touched it in years. The door groaned like it didn't want to be opened. Inside, glass panes were shattered. Ivy had invaded every corner, and the smell of damp earth wrapped around her like a blanket. She was humming to herself when she heard the voice. "You shouldn't be in here." She turned, heart slamming into her ribs. He stood in the shadow of the doorway, tall, angular, dressed in black. His face was unreadable. His voice held no warmth. She didn't know who he was, but her gut told her. Ethan Vale, the wicked billionaire. "I was told to clean it," she said, gripping the duster like a weapon. He studied her for a long moment. His eyes were a storm, not angry, but old, like they'd seen too much. Finally, he nodded once. "Just don't move the roses." She glanced to the corner where a single potted rose bush sat, completely untouched by time or rot. Blood-red petals, thorns like needles. "Understood," she whispered. He was already gone. Back in his study, Ethan sat in silence, her voice echoing in his ears. She hadn't flinched. Not when he stepped forward. Not even when she saw the scar beneath his eye that made most people look away. Who is she? And why did she feel like a memory? That night, as Mia sat in her little room, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of cocoa, she thought about the man in the greenhouse. His voice, his warning, his silence. He wasn't wicked. He was haunted. Have you ever stepped into something everyone else was too afraid to touch and found something beautiful hiding behind the fear? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your story. The storm began at midnight. Mia was folding towels in the linen room when thunder cracked so loud it shook the chandelier. The house groaned in reply, like the old bones of it remembered things no one dared speak out loud. Then, a knock. Sharp, fast, not at the front door, at hers. She opened it to find the house manager, face tight. "He's asking for you." "Who is?" "Mr. Vale. He needs assistance in the West Wing." Mia blinked. "There's a West Wing?" The woman didn't answer. She just turned and walked away. The West Wing was a part of the house Mia had never entered. It was darker, quieter, as if even the air moved more carefully here. Paintings lined the walls, covered in sheets. A broken chandelier lay forgotten in the hallway. At the very end, one door stood open, light spilling out like a secret.
Ethan was standing by the fireplace, shirt sleeves rolled, trying to wrap a thick white bandage around his left hand. Blood stained his palm. "You're bleeding," she said, rushing forward without thinking. He looked up, so I noticed. She didn't smile. "Sit," she ordered gently, motioning to the armchair. He hesitated. Then, to her surprise, obeyed. She knelt beside him, pulling supplies from the first aid kit. His hand was strong and cold, with long fingers that twitched slightly at her touch. "What happened?" "Glass in the conservatory. Forgot the door frame was cracked." "You should have called someone." "I don't like being fussed over." "Tough luck," she murmured, dabbing antiseptic over the wound. He winced. "Why are you still here?" he asked after a beat. "Most don't last 3 days." She didn't look up. "Maybe I don't scare as easily as they did. Maybe you're too desperate to care." That stung, but she understood the deflection. She'd used it herself. "Maybe," she said softly. "Or maybe I've seen worse things than this house." His eyes met hers. Something flickered. Not pity, not curiosity. Recognition. She finished the bandage and stood. But Ethan didn't move. He stared into the fire like it was speaking to him in a language only he understood. "You can go," he said after a long pause. She almost did. But something, a tug, made her stop at the doorway. "Do you ever go outside?" He looked at her surprised. "Why?" "You're surrounded by acres of forest, a lake, gardens, and yet you stay in this cave." His voice was low. "Outside is louder." "And inside is safer?" Ethan didn't answer. She left without another word. But the silence between them had changed shape. The next day, the rose bush in the greenhouse was gone. In its place, a white rose bloomed in a small glass jar on Mia's nightstand. No note, no explanation. She stared at it for a long time, her breath catching in her throat. Was it an accident? No. Was it an apology? No, not from a man like Ethan. It was something else. A beginning. Over the next few days, they saw more of each other, not by choice, but by fate. She caught him in the library, fingers brushing over spines of forgotten books. He passed her in the hall, pausing a heartbeat too long. One evening, she found herself in the music room, playing the old piano, only to discover he'd been listening from the shadows. Neither of them said much, but everything was being said anyway. One afternoon, she found a loose floorboard in the hallway. Beneath it, a small metal box, dusty and dented. Inside, a photograph of a young boy with his arms around a golden retriever, a crumpled hospital bracelet, a music box shaped like a carousel, a letter never sent. Mia didn't open the letter, but she brought the box to Ethan anyway. He froze when he saw it. "Where did you find that?" She handed it to him without a word. He looked down at it like it was a coffin. "You can keep it hidden," she said quietly, "but that won't make it disappear." His jaw clenched. His voice was tight. "You know nothing about what I've lost." "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to carry grief like luggage, pretending it's not heavy until you collapse." Silence. Long. Heavy. Then he whispered, "She was my sister." Mia blinked. "The bracelet, it was hers. She died when we were kids. No one talks about her anymore, but I kept that because I was the last one to see her before." He stopped. Her breath hitched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't want your pity." "It's not pity," she said gently. "It's permission to feel, to remember, to be human again." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood at the top of the stairs and watched her laugh with the chef in the kitchen below. Just a small moment, nothing important, except that it was. It had been so long since his house had held laughter, and now, because of her, it did. Have you ever felt something shift between two people without a single word being spoken? A look, a gesture, a silence? Tell me in the comments. I want to know if you felt that spark too. Ethan Vale had rules. No one entered his private wing, no one asked about his past, and above all, no one touched his heart. He'd built this house as a fortress, not from the world, but from himself. The staff knew it, the town whispered about it, and he'd accepted it as truth. Until Mia. She wasn't just surviving in Grievemont Mansion. She was changing it. Slowly. Gently. The kitchen now smelled of cinnamon in the mornings. The greenhouse was blooming again. Music floated down from the piano room once a week. And the worst part? He liked it. Which terrified him. One morning, Mia brought him coffee.
He didn't ask for it. She just left it on the table beside his book. He stared at the cup like it was a confession. She started to walk away but paused. "You always read the same book," she said quietly. "It's familiar. That's not the same as safe." He didn't reply. She didn't expect him to. But after she left, he drank the coffee anyway. Later that day, she found him in the garden. The one no one enters. The one locked behind rusted gates and overgrown hedges. But the gates were open. He stood by a weathered stone bench, his coat dusted with petals. The old statue of a girl, his sister, Mia guessed, stood in the center, vines curling around her stone fingers. He looked haunted and so alone. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, but he said, "Stay." And she did. They sat in silence for a long time. Birdsong, wind. Her shoulder brushed his once. Neither of them moved. Then he spoke. "My father built this garden. For her. After she died, he stopped coming. We all did. Why now?"
Because someone reminded me that ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. She looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't wicked. He was wounded. And she was falling. That night she paced her room, heart racing, pulse in her ears. This was wrong. He was her boss, her employer, her warning sign. But when he'd looked at her by that statue, something had passed between them, something neither of them could name, something that made the air feel too thick and the space too small. She couldn't feel this. Not now. Not here. She had her mother to think of, her debt, her pride. She didn't have time to fall for a man who lived in shadows. So she wrote a letter. "Mr. Vale, I believe it is best if I return to town. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll be gone by morning." She didn't sign it. She slid it under his door at midnight. But at dawn, when she went to leave, her suitcase was gone. In its place, a note. "If you're running because you're afraid, you're not the only one." She stared at the handwriting, strong, slanted, uneven. Not a plea, not a command, a confession. She didn't leave, but she avoided him. For 3 days they danced around each other like strangers again. Her footsteps echoed alone. The warmth in the kitchen faded. Even the music stopped. The house grew cold. On the 4th day, Ethan came to find her. In the greenhouse. "You play piano," he said softly. She looked up. Her eyes were tired. "You read the same book." A pause, then a smile, just barely. "I miss the music," he added. "I miss the coffee," she replied. They stood in the silence between them, raw, uncertain. "You scare me," she admitted. "I terrify you," he said. And then he stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat of him, the weight of every wall he'd ever built. "You're not who I thought you'd be," she whispered. "Neither are you," he said. But before he could speak again, a crash rang out from the driveway. Tires, voices, urgency. Something was about to change. Have you ever tried to run from something your heart wanted because it just felt too risky?
Tell me in the comments if you've ever been there, because Mia isn't the only one who panicked when it started to feel real. The crash outside wasn't just a noise. It was an arrival. An unfamiliar car, flashy, loud. A man in a sharp suit stepped out like he owned the place. Ethan's face darkened as he approached the window. "Who is that?" Mia asked, tension rippling through her voice. "My brother," Ethan muttered. Mia had never seen him go still like that. Not angry, not scared, just locked. What does he want? I haven't spoken to him in 6 years. His name was Gavin Vale, younger, slicker, all grins and poison. He showed up claiming he was just here to check in, but the energy shifted. The house felt under siege. Every time Mia walked into a room, Gavin's eyes were there, too curious, too focused. "You hired her?" Gavin said over dinner, eyeing Mia like she was a gamble. "Didn't know you were feeling generous lately." "She's excellent," Ethan replied, low and flat. "Is she, or is she something else?" Mia's hands clenched under the table. Ethan's jaw locked. Gavin stayed. One night became two. Two turned into a week. The brothers didn't fight openly, but something simmered under every word. Tension, history, regret. And Mia, caught in the middle. Because Ethan refused to leave her alone with Gavin, not for a moment. He started working from the library more, where she dusted shelves and organized old files. He joined her in the greenhouse, helping repot herbs with those strong, careful hands. He lingered in the kitchen, watching her knead dough like it was a performance he didn't want to miss. Mia noticed. The way his eyes softened when she laughed. The way he stepped in front of her, subtle but sure, when Gavin was near. The way he started saying good night, like he meant it. One evening, a storm hit. Power flickered, rain pounded against the windows. A branch crashed against the greenhouse, shattering part of the glass roof. "Don't go out there," Ethan barked when Mia grabbed her coat. "Those plants will drown." "I'll go." But she was already halfway across the field. He chased her. By the time they reached the greenhouse, they were soaked. Wind howled. Water streamed down Mia's neck. Her shirt clung to her skin. "Why do you have to do everything alone?" he shouted. "Because I'm used to no one showing up." The words echoed, louder than the thunder. Ethan froze. His hair dripped, his breath hitched. Then softer. "I'm here now." They worked side by side, saving what they could, lifting pots, covering beds, fighting nature. When it was over, they collapsed on the floor beside each other, breathing hard. "Thank you," she whispered, staring at the shattered ceiling above. "For what?" "For chasing me." Later, wrapped in blankets by the kitchen fire, Mia turned to him. "What happened with your brother?" Ethan stared at the flames. "He took everything I built, lied, ruined the one thing I cared about, then disappeared." "Why'd he come back?" "I don't know, but I don't trust him." She nodded. "I don't trust easily either." They sat in silence, but that silence held understanding, not fear. They didn't kiss that night, but something changed, because sometimes the most intimate thing is simply being seen and not running. Have you ever found comfort in someone at the exact moment life tried to break you? Tell me in the comments, do you think Ethan and Mia are saving each other or heading for heartbreak? Gavin didn't leave. In fact, he became pleasant. Too pleasant. Smiling, joking, acting as if he was just here for a family reunion. But every smile he gave Mia made her skin crawl. "I don't trust him," she whispered to Ethan one night. "He watches everything I do." "You're right to feel that."
Then why is he still here? Because he knows something I don't. And until I figure out what it is, I need to keep him close. Days passed. The mansion felt heavier, quieter. Mia kept to herself, sorting files in the back study, a room filled with dusty boxes and untouched memories. And that's when she found it. An old letter. Torn, yellowed, but still legible, hidden beneath a loose drawer panel. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but it was signed. "To my son, you are not your brother's shadow. Choose integrity over inheritance. Arthur Vale." Mia stared at the signature, Ethan's father. She reread the line again and again. "You are not your brother's shadow." Her stomach twisted. What had Gavin done? She took the letter to Ethan. His hands shook as he read it. "This was written before he died," he murmured. "I never saw this. He must have hidden it." His voice broke. "All those years, I thought he gave up on me. You were the good one, weren't you? But he made you believe you were the failure." He nodded, silent, then whispered, "Gavin forged the will. He got everything, left me with nothing." They sat in silence. A different kind of intimacy filled the air, grief shared. Not romantic, not heated, but sacred. The next day, Mia was in the library when Gavin cornered her. "You've gotten close to Ethan," he said, voice low. She stood straighter. "He trusts me." "That's cute, but you might want to ask him why your name felt familiar when he first heard it." Mia blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Check the guest logs. 5 years ago, a girl named Mia Foster came begging for a loan from the Vale Foundation. Rejected. Her family lost their house." Her breath caught. Her fingers went cold. "He knew?" she whispered. "I guess you'll have to ask him." Gavin smiled, walking away. That night, Mia crept into the old archive, found guest logs. Mia Foster, denied. A note beside it. "Too risky, no collateral. Tragic case, but we must remain impartial." Initials, E.V. Ethan Vale. She couldn't breathe. The firelight flickered. Her heart beat in her ears. All this time, he'd known who she was. He'd let her pour her story out, let her believe he was learning it for the first time. Let her trust him. When she confronted him, it wasn't loud. It was devastatingly quiet. "You knew who I was," she said, standing in the same kitchen where E once made her tea. Ethan froze. "I didn't know until after I hired you. I saw your name on the log, but by then..." "By then what?" "I didn't want to lose the way you looked at me." Her eyes burned. "So you let me believe you didn't recognize me. Let me relive it like a story you'd never heard before." He took a step forward. "Mia,
I didn't know what happened to you after the denial, after the loan fell through. The foundation was run by Gavin. I just approved signatures. I didn't... But you didn't tell me when you found out. She cut him off. That silence was the loudest sound in the room. She turned away. I came here to survive. You were just a job, a room, a salary. And now you're another lie. You were never just a job. But she was already walking away. Should Ethan have told her the truth earlier, or did Mia overreact? In real life, do we owe people every painful truth if it risks something beautiful? Let me know what you think in the comments.
You were planning this? From the start? No, he said quietly, but I was hoping. That night, as the storm cleared, they sat by the fire again. No confessions, no grand declarations, just small talk and shared warmth. It was enough. Have you ever tried to rebuild trust with someone who hurt you unintentionally? Can two wounded hearts really start over? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. The days grew softer. Ethan and Mia fell into something like a rhythm. She baked, he watched. They walked through the vineyard together, sometimes in silence, sometimes laughing. Sometimes his hand brushed hers. Neither of them flinched. It was slow, imperfect healing, but it felt real. Until the phone call. It was late afternoon when Ethan's phone rang in the library. Mia was outside pruning the roses. He answered without looking at the caller ID. A woman's voice. Sharp. Familiar. You're seriously still entertaining her? Ethan. He tensed. Lena. No, Ethan. Listen to me. You brought her in for one reason. We had a deal. You wanted this project wrapped by the end of summer. Ethan's stomach twisted. This isn't... She's a charity case, Ethan. An experiment. And now you're falling for the act? Please. Silence. I said stop, Lena. Click. He turned and saw Mia standing at the door. Eyes wide. Lips trembling. Her hand still held the rose she'd just trimmed. The thorns cut into her fingers, but she didn't feel it. You brought me here as some kind of project? No. Then what was she talking about? What did she mean you had a deal? Mia, please, it's not what you think. Her voice shook. Tell me the truth. Ethan swallowed. His voice cracked. I wanted to help someone. I asked Lena to find a candidate, someone who needed a break. I didn't know it would be you. I didn't know it would be us. Mia took a step back, blood dripping from her fingers. So I was a pity hire? No, you are so much more than that. You let me believe I earned this. I did, I swear. She shook her head, eyes blazing with betrayal. You rich people really do live in another world. He stepped forward. I didn't mean to deceive you. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Tears filled her eyes. You knew how broken I was, and you still played me. Ethan froze. Do you think any of this, any of us, was fake? Mia laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was anguish. I think I don't know who you are at all. She turned and walked out the door, blood and petals trailing in her wake. Ethan didn't follow. He couldn't move. The fireplace still burned, but the room was ice cold. When trust breaks, do you believe love can still survive? Or are some betrayals too deep to come back from? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. I'm reading them all. Mia left the mansion that night.
No goodbye, no explanations. She packed what little she had, took the last bus, and disappeared into the city fog. The next morning, Ethan walked into her room. It still smelled faintly of lavender and cinnamon, the way she always left it after baking. On her nightstand was a single piece of paper, unfinished. "I think I'm starting to fall in love with you, Ethan, but maybe that's just the part of me that finally feels seen." The rest was scratched out, torn. Ethan sat on her bed and read it again and again. She had felt it too. And now she was gone. Mia found an old friend from her baking school days who let her sleep on a worn-out couch in a tiny studio apartment. She applied for jobs. She didn't bake. Days passed, then a week, but nothing tasted like anything anymore. She would wake up at 2 a.m., heart racing, thinking she was still in the mansion kitchen, hearing Ethan's voice in her head. "You deserve everything good, Mia." She would press her hands to her face and cry silently, afraid of what her heart still wanted, because it wanted him. Ethan, meanwhile, went quiet. No meetings, no emails, no calls. Lena showed up once. "I told you she'd leave. They always do when the money runs out or the truth comes out. You'll move on." But he didn't. He didn't shave, didn't sleep. He spent hours staring at the empty garden Mia once cared for. The roses were wilting, just like him. Then one morning, he sat at his desk and finally picked up a pen. He wrote, "Mia, I broke your heart, not because you weren't enough, but because I never believed I was. You weren't an experiment. You were the only real thing I've ever known in this empty world. If you ever find it in your heart to forgive me, I'll be waiting." He sealed it, but he didn't send it. What if she didn't want to hear from him? What if she had already moved on? And then Mia found it, by accident. Her friend's neighbor was a chef. He had been invited to a charity dinner held by some reclusive billionaire. The vineyard ghost, they joked. She tagged along, not knowing where they were going. She froze when she saw the gates, the mansion. She almost left, but something told her to stay. She wandered into the library just to breathe, to remember. That's when she saw it. The letter, unsent, unopened, sitting beneath a stack of sketches she used to doodle on the kitchen counter. She picked it up, hands shaking, and read his words, every one a heartbeat, every one real. She turned, and there he was, standing at the door, staring at her like he was seeing the sun after a year of darkness. He whispered, "I couldn't send it. I thought I didn't deserve a second chance." Mia stepped forward. Tears filled her eyes, her voice barely audible. "I wasn't looking for perfect, Ethan. I was looking for honest." Silence. Then he crossed the room and took her hands in his. This time, she didn't pull away.
Have you ever been afraid to tell someone how you really feel? Do you believe people deserve a second chance? Let me know in the comments. Your story might help someone else. Mia stood there, the letter still trembling in her hand. She looked around the library, the shelves she'd dusted, the old fireplace where Ethan once brought her a blanket when she fell asleep mid-shift, the worn chair where she used to curl up and dream about something more. Now, she didn't have to dream anymore. Ethan stepped closer, his voice cracked but soft. "I didn't know how to fight for someone until I lost you.
Mia gave a weak laugh, tears glistening. And I didn't know someone like you could be afraid. I'm terrified, he admitted, of losing you again, of not being enough, of screwing this up. She reached up and touched his cheek. Then let's be scared together. They didn't kiss right away. There was no dramatic music, no sudden fade to black. Just two broken people standing in the middle of a mansion, once built to keep the world out, now finally letting someone in. They stayed like that for a while, just holding hands, breathing the same air. A week later, the mansion came alive again. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. The garden bloomed again under Mia's loving care. The staff smiled because he smiled. Ethan reopened the vineyard, but this time not as a business, as a sanctuary. He named the new vintage after her, Mia's first press. He refused to make money off it. Every bottle was gifted to women who were starting over, women who had been told they were too much or not enough. Inside every bottle cap, a note. You are not invisible. You are not replaceable. You are not broken. You are the beginning of something extraordinary. They didn't rush to get married. They took long walks through the vineyard, made dinner together. Her lasagna always beat his. They fought sometimes, laughed harder, and every time they felt the distance creeping in, they'd sit at that same kitchen table, the one she once sat at by mistake, and talk, and choose each other again. One evening, under the stars, Mia looked up at him. Still think I was a test you were running? Ethan grinned. No, you were the cure I didn't know I needed. Have you ever found love where you least expected it, or after giving up on it completely? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it today. She took the job no one wanted, at the mansion everyone feared, and ended up finding the love she never knew she deserved. Because sometimes the life you're running from is the one you're meant to live.